well, welcome to Council Preview. I'm Tom Loucks, your Communications Director for the City of Marshfield, and thank you for joining me. My guests here today, City Administrator Steve Barg, and we have our Mayor, Lois Testrake, with us as well. Thanks for coming, you guys.
Good to be here with you.
Yeah. Well, this will be our new format, as I mentioned before in our last council preview and city administrator's report. We took out the city administrator's report, and that'll be separate. And now we went back to just council preview, and our mayor is going to join us when we have these, which is 2 times a month generally. So we'll get you up to speed on what's going to happen for the August 9th council meeting. But first, again, I want to welcome Lois here, and she always has a section in this as well called Mayor's Comments. Been here almost 100 days. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for having me, and it's exciting, over 100 days already. And it's just, so far, I've been very excited, very happy. Things are still on the upside, and I'm hopefully going to keep that going, showing the public that this is what I projected, and I'm going to keep that going.
All right. Well, in this section, you do employee recognitions for time, and you can also bring up other comments at that time. And some people might want to know maybe what you would possibly bring up if that was the case.
Again, I think it's great that I get to do the employee recognitions because that is part of my heart, is giving people kudos. And some of these folks, like this next Tuesday, it'll be a 5-year person, a 10-year person. I've done a 20, 25. This shows that Marshfield's got a lot of good stuff going on because we have employees that stay. I think that's exciting. And as you all know, when I was running for mayor, I encourage people to come to meetings. Come to council meetings. Actually, come to any meeting. Okay, you can watch it on TV, but it's more fun to see it in person because then you maybe can introduce yourself or just watch people. And at some point, might even get comfortable enough to be on a committee. See, I think that, to me, that would be the most exciting part. With my tenure so far, the things I have learned, and if I can learn them, trust me, you all can do the same thing.
Well, and if I can add to that too, I mean, we always talk about how we are a service-based business. We don't make a product, so our employees are the business. And it's great to be able to recognize them for their years of service because they're the ones who are out there doing it every day.
You bet. All right, well, let's dig right into this agenda, Steve, and we're going to go right into the consent piece. That's a piece that has to do with all our committee, commissions, boards, kind of in lump sum. Again, a council can take pieces out if they would wish to do that, but we wanted just to highlight a few things that happened in our Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee meeting. Zero tolerance for the workplace, Steve. What's this about?
Yeah, you know, Lois was on vacation, and a very well-deserved one. Back in early July, got a chance to get away. While she was gone, I thought there might even had to have been a need for a vote to break a tie. It almost was. But by a 6-4 vote back in early July, the council did elect to have the signs removed from City Hall that say no weapons or firearms are permitted in the building. And so after the meeting, and I was walking away with one of our employees back to our offices, and that individual said to me, well, no, wait a minute, don't we have something in the personnel policy separate from those signs that says that employees cannot, carry? And so we checked into it, and it actually said in the personnel policy, or says currently to date, that employees cannot, and neither can members of the council, or I think committees as well. So it was kind of weird what we did that night by having the signs taken down. We didn't realize it, but we were saying it's okay to carry, but there was a whole groups of people who are not allowed to do so. So what this ordinance, or I should say what this policy, the revised one, does is removes that. If approved by the council, that would mean that employees and council and committee members who come to our offices for meetings and whatnot would be able, the same as all other citizens, to be able to carry into the building, for example, under concealed carry or something similar. That's the whole purpose. It seems like housekeeping, but it's an important thing because the personnel policy needs to be upheld and it needs to be correct.
Now, and we're really not talking about buildings at this point, right, anymore. Does that mean that an employee from Streets that works at Streets could conceal and carry, or is that not part of this?
All this really pertains to our people who are employees of the City Hall building itself, and then the mayor and council, and like I said, I think it refers to committees too. So there are a lot of different permutations of this being talked about. One of the other things that's been talked about is, what about the other buildings? Well, as Lois could tell you, the fire and police department, they respond to the Fire and Police Commission. The library board governs the library, and all those folks have decided they don't want to see their signs taken out, that they don't want to see weapons in their building. Other buildings right now, whatever applies continues to apply. You may hear more about that later, but everything we talk about right now applies only to City Hall.
Okay, all right, so we're just talking about our building and the employees that work in that building, or visit that building, I should say, right? Because
Correct.
we all do come and visit
Correct.
at times, so we have to make sure that's done. So, well, let's move on to the next piece here, sick leave. COVID has changed the world.
It really has. And I think COVID's going to leave its mark on all of us for a long, long time to come. Back in 2020, before Lois was our mayor, we had to do a whole lot of policies and do a whole lot of things to account for the COVID-19 pandemic. One of them we did was we found a way to make an allowance for people to take sick leave. Let's say they're at home, they've been told they had an exposure or whatever, they're dealing with a family member, maybe they've quarantined themselves, to allow the opportunity for sick leave to be used for those purposes, as opposed to other types of leave. And it may sound like, well, of course you do, but technically the policy wouldn't have allowed that before. So now we've really kind of come out of COVID. I know there's talk about maybe a resurgence at some point, but what about the next pandemic? What about if COVID comes back later? That policy expired, so it's no longer good. So we talked about extending it for some period of time, and then we finally said, you know what, why don't we just make it a permanent thing that if we have a pandemic of any kind, it can be COVID, it can be something else, that will give that allowance to our employees who need to be at home for those reasons.
Don't have to reinvent the wheel, in other words. It's already there, which is
Correct.
fabulous. Yes.
And that's a great point, Lois, because when we have a pandemic, there's a million things going on in your mind, and employee sick leave is not the first of them. You're dealing with all crazy things. So why not have this in place for the next pandemic? It might be 10 years from now, but why not have it on the books for the next pandemic?
Makes sense. All right, we got a third piece in here. Part of it went to closed session at our finance meeting. Appoint an accountant. What's that about?
Well, it's really funny because in the last few months we've had a lot of changes administratively in terms of the structure of our departments. None more than finance. They've made tremendous strides. I think they're pulling together a great plan. Jennifer Selensky, the finance director, I cannot say enough good things about. Jordan Munger, who started back in early May as the accounting manager, is doing a great job. They have a wonderful staff. But they're trying to put the pieces in place for most effectiveness. So if you recall, they've already done a couple things. They're right now working with the clerk's office to have a joint position, a full-time position between those two departments that will be able to serve both of them. And this piece, I think, will kind of close out their restructuring. It will allow them to have two positions called accountant that can do equal work. Not always the same work, but equal levels of skill, equal levels of responsibility. And that will really allow them, it'll take a lot off, or at least take some off Jordan's plate, allowing him to do higher level work. And that'll make him even more efficient in terms of producing the reports and the studies that the council would like to see. So this will be the final piece of what they've been working on, and it'll be good to get to that point where the department is finally to where I think Jennifer and others of us believe it's in the right place.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll see if anything is pulled out or just going straight through. We'll see where that goes on Tuesday. But now we get into these other items that are separated from the consent. Most of them at this time are sometimes need discretion of the council, a vote or something. One thing I wanted to bring up here with you, Mayor, is you have the tiebreaker if it comes out. And that is somewhat unique. I think you've had to do it once already.
Actually, 2 times.
Oh,
in the
2
meeting.
times.
You have already, haven't you?
Yes, sir.
That's true.
Yes,
Yeah,
and I'm very
good.
proud of myself. Actually, before the meeting started, I knew which way I was going to vote.
Sure.
So when the 5-5 came, I didn't even think twice about it because I knew how I was going to vote. So I just pushed the button, and I'll tell you what, 3 council members just looked. They're like, "You voted already?" Well, then after the meeting, I just said, "Well, yes,
Right.
I did my research, and I feel very proud of that because I knew how I felt that this should go." And it was neat to do a tiebreaker. I feel very good about that. Yes, and I believe it was the right tiebreaker. Even after the meeting, walking out the door, 2 people that voted against it actually thanked me for breaking the tie. Maybe not because they agreed with me, but you know what? I think that's great.
Yeah.
Moves us forward.
Yep, and we didn't have that for over a year.
No, we didn't.
And we did have a few of our things just not be able to move forward when it was a tie. So
In fact, concealed carry, the whole firearms in City Hall was one of them. We had a 5-5 vote, and one of the people who voted was the council president, who was kind of leading the meetings, Nick Peschel, and there was no one to break the tie, so it failed 5 to 5. I mean, it does fail if it doesn't get a majority, but that's not normally the way you want to see it go down. You want to see it broken affirmatively by someone.
Correct.
Yep. All right, well, let's get right into it here. Let's talk about finance here. There's a lot of things on here about finance, but this one is about an audit report every year.
Yep.
We get one. This is 2021.
Correct, yeah. And I'm sorry, I intended to bring the book so people could see how thick it was. We weren't going to go through it page by page on this program, believe me. And it's kind of funny, Lois and the council members will all have different levels of interest when they see this book. There's a couple that I think read it almost every page. Mm-hmm. Others will be looking for the key points, where are we at in this fund, where are we at in that fund, what was our net surplus or net loss, if you will, net deficit for the year. And everything I'm understanding was that it was a pretty decent year. You'll get the report from John Troutman of CLA, our auditors, and they'll go through some things, and they'll maybe mention a couple things that they think we ought to look at for the future. And then the council can do some Q&A with them, ask them some questions. But this has become really important, especially in the last 4 years. The audit report is always important, but it's particularly important since we've been coming out of some of the financial concerns we had back in 18 and 19. And it does sound like we're continuing to make progress, so that'll be good to hear publicly.
All right, and we'll hear that presentation. Is John in person or Zoom?
Yep. John will be with us in person, and he's done this report a number of times. We've actually had CLA as our auditor since 2013, which is one of the reasons you're going to hear in a minute that we're looking at bidding out the service, because we want to see who else is out there and what they offer. But John does a very good job.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll find out what that is, and recommend action is to accept and place on file. Let's go to my checklist here that I have. General obligation funds. That means we either sold them, or we are going to sell them.
We are, and by the time I get done with this item, I'm going to ask Lois a couple of questions myself. I'm going to take the microphone away from you. No, I'm just kidding.
That's fine.
Just kidding. Tom is our host.
Yeah.
But, every year we borrow roughly $4 million to do major work on streets, keeping up our buildings and facilities, parks, whatever it is, sometimes buying major equipment for the fire department. And so this year it's going to be about $4.3 million. And just had a call with Moody's today as far as our rating. It's looking like it's going to be very good as far as our bond rating. But we need to borrow these monies, and it's all part of a process. The plan right now, if we approve the resolution on Tuesday night, will be to close on the bonds at the end of the month. So hopefully we'll get a lot of bidders. The more bidders you get, the better interest rate you get. And of course, the interest rates aren't as good as they were a year or two ago, because we all know what's going on in the market. But that will allow us to push forward in the bigger projects, the ones that people, I think, want to follow the most. Is my street going to be rebuilt? When are you going to improve this park or whatever? And those are all in there. But what I'd like to ask Lois, I know that we've been hearing for years, I've been hearing for years, but I'm not an elected official, that streets really are the thing people talk about the most. And so when we talk about spending roughly 75% of this borrowing money on street projects, that really does sound like what the public wants to hear. What do you hear from citizens?
Thank you for that great question, Steve. The most exciting one that I have seen since I've been mayor is 17th Street by the fairgrounds. And it is beautiful, everyone. You need to either drive by or walk by and just see it. It is absolutely seamlessly done. It makes us proud. And of course, once the full street is done, it's going to be even more dynamic. And yes, I do believe that the streets are the most important. The potholes, well, we all know that everybody's busy with their action that they're doing. Some folks even said, well, can I just get some hot mix and take care of it myself? Well, I don't know, can you? Well, you're not really, this isn't part of what we could do as far as like insurance. If something were to happen, that would be an awful thing. So I had heard before I was mayor even that if you take a picture with your iPhone and send it to the office, they'll pinpoint right down to where it is. And if they can get at it in 2 or 3 days or maybe a week, they'll come out and fill it for you. Wow, that's cool too, isn't it, everybody? So again, we are working with each other, and that is, to me, the most proud thing about being mayor, is because we're in this together. Again, I can't promise everyone that their potholes are going to get filled. Hopefully they will. And again, you bike riders, oh, I know exactly what you mean. I do a lot of walking, and let me tell you, I've fallen into a couple of those potholes. I didn't go down to China, thank goodness, because it's not that deep, but you can very easily fall into those potholes. So hopefully by the end of the summer, we can make some more of this happen. And just remember, everybody, where we live, the streets can change in a couple days because of the weather, because of this, that. So we all need to have a little bit of extra ease for people. And you know what? I think if we do that, it's going to come better.
Thank you. I agree. And in my 12 years here, that's probably the biggest thing I've heard is, can you keep up on the streets? We know that you have limited funds, but whatever you can do to keep those roads improved is a good thing. And hopefully the money from this borrowing, which is largely for streets, will help us toward that end.
Now, this borrowing of about $4.3 million, that's for projects next year, correct? Not this year or this year?
Well, it's actually for this year as well.
It is, okay.
It's actually for this year as well. I mean, we knew we were going to do the projects, and we use the money to pay the contractors. We have to time it out. And it's not all for projects that are going on right now, but yeah, it's current projects as well. We know that we're doing them. We know we're borrowing money. Of course, we always hope to get the best interest rate. But we know we're going to do one of these borrowings every single summer.
Okay. All right. Well, that will be presented by our finance director, Jennifer, as well. Let's move on to another piece, compensation market update. That has to do with employees' pay scales?
Yeah, Tom, about 5 years ago, it started in 17, it was finally approved in early 18. We worked with McGrath, a company out of Northern Illinois, to do a compensation plan. And it's a very big thing. I mean, you have to figure out what the pay grades are for all the employees. They go through all the job descriptions, and they say, well, if you do this job or this job or this job, you're in pay grade 128, and it means your salary range will be from A to Z. But you look back after a couple of years and you say, well, is it still accurate? The market's been changing, you know, and is it changing the same for every position? Maybe an accountant is now, you know, should be bumped up higher than somebody else is. So what they said to us when they worked with us back in 17 and 18 was, after 5 years, you really ought to look at doing a market update. Not a full-blown new plan. We're not starting from scratch, but they'll take a lot of the jobs and they'll compare them to the market and get a sense of whether or not we're still in a good place or whether we need to make some adjustments. I brought this to the council back in June, and at that time they said, no, let's put this on hold for a minute. That was before Sarah Dressel, our new HR director, had started. They definitely wanted her to be a part of that, and she's been with us now for 5 weeks and ready to walk beside me on this as well. We believe this is something that we need to do to find out where we're at after what's been effectively 5 years now.
I'm just curious, and maybe our viewers are as well, about when they say a market update, is that have to do with current other government employees or beyond government employees? Say, accountant. Everyone has an accountant. There's government accountants. There's clinic accountants. Do they check both, or is it just for government?
Well, that's a really great question, Tom. When they did the initial plan back in 2017 into the beginning of 18, they got both public and private data. I will tell you this, though, they have a hard time getting private data. They didn't get as much as they'd like, because private employers oftentimes don't have the same incentive to share. I mean, public employers were required. If someone calls when I get back to my office today and says, Steve Barg, how much do you make? I have to tell them. I can't say, well, that's confidential now. But private employers, if you give them a big thing and you want them to fill out all these, what every job makes, they're busy people. They might say, you know what's in it for me? We just don't have the time to fill these requests. So I've been told by McGrath, who will do this one, that it would be heavily focused, if not entirely, on public sector comparisons. Where do we compare with Stevens Point, Wisconsin Rapids, other communities of our size in the general area? That's where the focus will likely be.
And now, government is changing, especially in you've been in it with, 35 years?
Yeah, even longer than that, yeah.
You're finding out new jobs out there,
yeah.
like mine, or
yep.
social engagement coordinator, or Wenzel Plaza. You
right.
didn't have these, so how do they find another community that maybe not like us, that have these? I mean, communication director, a little different, but that's going to be harder.
We turn that over to the mayor. No, I'm just kidding. just kidding. No, they try to pair up with the closest thing they can find, and it's hard. I mean, you're right. You've identified some jobs that didn't exist back in 1990 or whatever, or even 2017 possibly in some cases. What they look at is duties, not titles. They look at, here's what you do. Here's the skill level. Here's the educational amount required, to do the job. Is it a bachelor's? Is it a master's? And then they try and find something comparable to compare it with.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm glad you brought that up about duties versus titles, because some people do get hung up on titles versus duties. So,
yep.
All right. Well, we'll find out what's going to happen if that is, and that would actually go to our McGrath company, correct?
Yeah, and I think one thing that Lois and the council has been very big on is saying they want to keep up with salaries. I mean, again, the majority of our budget is salaries of the people who work there, and we know we didn't go into government to make a fortune, but we want to make sure that we're taking care of people, that they feel good about working there. But there's also financial considerations. There's limited finances. There's limited tax revenue and revenue from the state of Wisconsin. So, but we want to get an idea, I think, of what these jobs are worth, and then we can see what we're able to do in order to to match up with that.
Yep. All right, let's move on back to financial again here. Actually, we really never left the finance.
We really didn't. It's a heavily finance meeting.
Yeah, but we're back to the audit services, which we talked about. John doing a presentation. Now you'll be looking to kind of go out for some proposals. Is that right?
Yeah, we will. And what we do after that, they come in, and then we look at them. We don't look at the price right away. We go through the proposal. We take a separate envelope at the end to look at price, because we don't want to rule somebody out just because it's a little bit more. But hopefully we'll get a handful of proposals, and we're going to set up a team, and it be maybe a couple of elected officials. Could be the mayor and another council member. Could be a couple of council members and some staff people getting in a room. And Marshfield Utilities is part of this too, because they're in the game as well. And we go through them and we try to figure out who the top candidate is. We may do interviews if we think the top two are even, and we want to talk to them personally. But then they'll make a recommendation back to their boards. The commission, the Utilities Commission will hear theirs, and the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee and the council will hear the recommendation on our side, and then hopefully have an auditor signed on by sometime later in the fall. And this is very important. I mean, I think Lois and the council are going to see this again. Our auditor is a very important role, because they're the ones who are going through all the books and telling us, here's where you stand. Here's the things that you should feel good about. Here's the things you should feel concerned about. And it's an important role in the city.
Mayor, you're also involved in a business. You've been a business owner. Is that somewhat, do most businesses maybe don't have an auditor, but they have a CPA?
Yeah,
is that the same idea?
Goes through the books.
That goes through the books? I mean, I know small businesses have to have that somewhat too. So it's not, we have to have an auditor is really
Right.
what we
Yeah,
need,
we
right?
do.
Correct.
Okay. So, all right. Well, so then, yeah, as a business owner, you understand the importance of that, to go through the books to make sure things are lining up from what the actual staff or owner has.
Correct, yes, and that's partly what I bring to the table, is because I've been in business for over 30 years, owning a business myself. So I understand the financial ramifications of what happens, yes, and having a CPA. It's funny, I was on the Main Street Board for 17 years. I did everything for Main Street except the bookwork, because I had my own bookwork to do with the business. So that end of it, we had a great team. We had great teams on everything. So I never worried about that when I was president for even 9 years, because I knew that they were trusted. So that was a great thing to have. And again, I didn't want to have to do any more numbers. I had enough numbers floating around in my head.
All right. Well, that proposal or actually statement will be in the packet. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. The actual request for proposals will be in the packet. And if the council says it's all good, then look for the very next day for us to send them out to people we've been able to identify from various resources as being qualified in the state of Wisconsin to perform audits. And then we'll see how many of those folks respond with actual proposals.
All right. Ed Wagner, our council president, is asking for a special council meeting here. What's that about?
Well, and we may want to talk a little bit about this. There was a special council meeting on Tuesday, August 2nd, with the Fire and Police Commission, and that was to look at some things that are going on with our EMS department and the finances. And I just want to touch on this for a second, and then maybe see Lois's take as we look at possibly a special council meeting. But it's the ambulance service is a challenging one, whether you're in a private or public environment. Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement rates from the government have been fairly flat, and even while that happens, costs are rising and some other challenges are out there. So we have some things that we've identified as challenges, places where maybe we need to do a little improving. We walked through those the other night. At the end of the meeting, after Pete Fletty of the fire department and Jennifer Slensky, our finance director, gave some good presentations. Jordan Munger, our accounting manager, gave a great presentation as well of some of the data. Now it's time to look at what we do with it. And there's various ideas out there. We could do this, we could do this, we could do this. And you want to put a package together. How do you try and make the EMS operation as sustainable long-term financially as you can? So Ed Wagner, the council president, floated the idea that maybe we have a special council meeting, just the council, address the council. And I ran that by Mayor Testrake, and she felt that that was a good idea as well. So that he's going to probably put a little bit more meat on the bones, so to speak, at the meeting. He'll be the presenter. He'll probably talk about not only the time and location, but the purpose of this meeting. What are we hoping to accomplish? It's going to deal with the EMS ambulance issue, but how is he trying to get at? Why does he think that the idea he's trying to form for a meeting will be effective for moving us forward?
Okay, and that would be a meeting that you would still be the leader of the meeting because it's a regular council meeting, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, it's just that as a speaker of that meeting, that would be our council president to give a presentation.
That is correct. Yep.
Okay.
Probably. Yeah. You're talking about the meeting, if we ever have the meeting?
Yeah, if we have a
Yeah.
special meeting, if they say we're going to have that meeting would probably be done.
Yeah,
It's still a council meeting and
I
presided by
think
the
Lois will still run that meeting.
Okay.
But on Tuesday night at the council meeting on the 9th, Council President Wagner is going to be the one we're going to look to explain the purpose of this, what he wants to accomplish, and get at the details so people can get a buy-in to that special meeting.
Okay, and you actually have to have a vote of the council to have an extra meeting
Correct.
like that.
Correct.
Okay, well, we'll see what happens on that. Anything else on this agenda that we need to bring up at this meeting?
Well, I'll mention the closed items again. I can't talk specifically about them. I know that probably frustrates some of our viewers. But the two items on for closed session, and if Lois, if you want to comment too, they're both projects we're trying to get to the finish line. One is working with the mall owners on a project we've talked about many times. They would like to open it up, get some new retailers in there, and we think it's an exciting idea. But it's all about, they're asking for a little help from us, and does it make sense, and do we want to sign an agreement? But there have been good conversations, both with the council and the developer, so that's good news. Hopefully we'll get to some sort of resolution soon, and we can see that project move ahead. I know the community is pretty excited about it. And then the other one is down at 21st and Washington area, where there's a proposal to build 55 new homes, or develop 55 lots for single-family construction. And that one, there's some question marks about, but we're trying to see if we can't keep working on that one as well. We need more housing. You probably hear that too. We need more housing for the people who would like to live in our community.
That's correct.
Yeah, that's important. That's how people can stay here and not leave our community and go and spend their money somewhere else. And we want them here.
That's
It's
correct.
important that
Absolutely.
We like the people here that work here. We'd like them to live here, play here, you name it. So
Yeah, and I've said this many times, Tom, I think in these programs with you. If someone really wants to, have horses and have, that's great. There's a lot of nice areas around the outskirts of the city, some towns that you can move to. You want 10 acres, whatever. We just want to make sure that the people who really would like to live in the city, and we'd love to have them here, that they have opportunities. That they don't drive around and say, I can't find a house to buy, I can't find a lot to build on. I guess, honey, we'll have to look out in the country. We want the people who would like to live here to be able to live here. That's really our goal, to make those opportunities available.
all right. I guess one last thing I'll bring up here with our mayor is we have public comment, and I think what you do is request to sign up before.
Yes. Sign up before, and there'll be a 5-minute timer. I'll use my iPhone and give you 5 minutes at the lectern to say what you need to say, because we need to be respectful of other people that want to come up to make their comments. Obviously, unless it's an urgent issue, the council does not act on any of the issues. I find it funny because after the meeting, a couple times people will ask me, well, how come I couldn't speak again after that? Oh. But it's basically there just for you to make a comment. So if you want to come back to the next meeting and make another comment, and that's not redundancy, because maybe you have another idea, or maybe what you heard at the meeting, you need to further show what you're actually talking about, or you maybe have another idea. Again, it's maybe weird to stand up there and talk to people, but we are all there to listen, and the respect I feel that the council has, and Steve, for people that come in, I have never seen a head shake or a weird look on any of the council members, and I think that says a lot for us. And actually, before the meetings, I generally walk out and introduce myself if I see people signing up, because I just think that gives them just a little more relaxation.
Yeah.
I can't get to everybody, but if I can, I will do that. And yeah, it's neat to see 3 or 4 people coming to the podium and actually talking about stuff.
Right.
You have definitely brought a personal touched the city government in a way that is very wonderful.
Thank
So
you.
I want to
Thank
applaud you for that. And I do want to say to people who might want to come to public comment that don't walk away and think, well, was I talking to the wall? They didn't answer me. They didn't tell me what they can do for me. Oftentimes what we do is we farm it out to the right department head and then say, hey, let's put that on the next agenda. Let's say you brought up a traffic concern at the intersection of two streets, and you walk away and you think, did they even hear me? There's going to be some follow-up. We'll find out if the traffic warrants it, a four-way stop or whatever it is, and if you want us to get back to you, we'll do that as well. But they're generally, as Lois said, they're not going to, in front of you, try and make a decision because they really can't. It's not even an agenda item.
Correct. It's
And
not.
actually, what's exciting is after the last council meeting, a lady was up, did her public comments, and guess what? The next day, I got right on board and helped to make that happen, what she needed. So that was really
cool.
exciting. And the issue was she was wondering why there wasn't a sign in the community center, the no gun sign. Well, about a year ago, they replaced the door because it wasn't working, and they just never thought to put the sign up. Guess what? The sign went up yesterday. So I think that is kudos to Marshfield. Wow, exciting.
Yep, things get done that way. Makes a big difference. One thing I just wanted to bring up, Steve, just for clarification. Again, people can also write in a letter, and who can they be? To just only the council, or can they write it to a mayor or yourself?
They can write and send it to City Hall at 207 West 6th Street. They can address it to the mayor. They can address it to the council, and then we'll put individual copies if we can make them in the council mailboxes. They can send it to me. I'll make sure that it gets out electronically, or copies to the council. They get them and they see them, they read them, and you're right. In fact, if you want it read at the meeting, I can do it, or somebody else can do it. The mayor can actually read your letter without you being there if you didn't feel led to come in person. We do want your concerns known by everybody, and we'll do it at the meeting if you request it.
If you request it. And then one last question on how the public engages. I know on Tuesday night the public was going to engage in the meeting, and then that stopped. Is there any way that the public can come back and talk if the council yields time to them here in this kind of format that we have? Or is it that the public cannot talk about an agenda item, if at all?
Well, the public can always talk during public comment, and the mayor will recognize them. At a meeting, otherwise, let's say that Tuesday night's meeting is right during the meeting and somebody raises their hand and they want to talk. It's entirely up to the mayor. The mayor can say, do you have something to say that's specific to what we have here that would be helpful to know? Okay, I'll give you a minute up at the podium. Or she can say, you know what, we don't take public comment. You had your opportunity earlier in the meeting, and this is now just for the council. So it really is in her domain. I think most of the time, we expect people to make the comments during public comment, but if you see somebody and there's reason to believe that they have something pertinent, data, information to the conversation that would help, we could definitely recognize them.
Okay, well, that's just a good clarification. I've heard some questions about that, so I thought it would be a good time to bring that up. Well, our time is about up here, probably over a half hour. Thanks for coming. I think this
Absolutely.
is great.
Thank you for having me again.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I hope you come back, and this format works out really good to have the meeting, because this meeting of the council is your meeting, mayor's meeting.
It
and
is.
we want to make sure that you're here and you have the input into what we're talking about here for the public, because we want to get this out to our citizens before, to people know, and again, we welcome everyone that would like to come. We'll
Correct.
make room.
Yes, we will. And now the great thing about this, after this, if you do have a comment, you could put it in public comments, because you kind of know what to expect. So that might give you that little leg up.
Yep. All righty. Well, I want to again thanks to our mayor, Lois Testrake, and our city administrator, Steve Barg, for joining me, and I appreciate that. And we'll be back towards the middle of this month again. And thanks for watching us on our council preview